this week's heart-ripping chapter of Bleach, the battle between Kisuke Urahara and Askin Naklavar comes to a bloody end, as Urahara unleashes the surgical power of his Bankai. I swear to God, if Askin Naklavar survives the big attack at the end of this week's chapter, I am officially pissed off. This guy has way too many trump cards, and I have a feeling that he is officially going to be defeated in this week's chapter, which honestly had one hell of a twist. This was a real easy chapter to follow, too. Basically, it was just Urahara using his Bankai, pushing Askin Naklavar against the wall, and revealing what his powers are, which are actually not all that complex. That giant woman that he summons is effectively this, giant puppet-like woman who has the ability to basically restructure anything that she touches. Basically, if you get within range of his Bankai, he can reconstruct you in any different way that he would like. And he does this in a number of different ways. He demonstrates this by actually showing Askin Naklavar that he can take his arm, split it completely down the middle, and as soon as he gets out of the range of it, it immediately goes back to normal. But basically, if you get near him, you are completely screwed. And honestly, it makes sense that he would have a Bankai like this, seeing as how he's like a mad scientist, he's a doctor, and this way he's actually able to heal himself. His eyes, all the damage on his body, now he's got all these cool looking scars all over his face. Urahara is officially pissed in this week's chapter, and there are a lot of great action scenes, especially when he's actually confronting Askin Naklavar, getting right up in his face, blasting him at point-blank range, them going sword to sword. It's pretty damned exciting, but really it's all a build-up to that one big final attack, where essentially Urahara lets Askin Naklavar know, look, you already told me that your abilities are inescapable, but you never told me that they weren't impenetrable. And this is actually one of the biggest twists about this chapter, because Urahara is not going to be fighting against Askin Naklavar alone. No, he's actually going to be getting some very big help from this guy, because towards the end of the chapter, seemingly out of nowhere, a hand just explodes right through Askin Naklavar's body, holding his heart, and it's not Urahara, and you're left wondering, who could this possibly be? And this is when Urahara finally reveals that he actually created these trails of stitches, which are going over all of these buildings. It looks really creepy, and this allowed, of all people, Grimmjow Jaggerjax to get inside of his giant deluxe ball to shove his arm right through Askin Naklavar, crushing his heart at the end of the chapter. It was freaking awesome. So what's the rundown on this week's chapter of Bleach? This was a surprisingly simple chapter, and I thought that it was going to go on a little bit longer with the whole explanation of the Bankai and everything. I'm glad they didn't focus on it for too long, because that's what they always do in Bleach. When someone reveals their brand new ability, they have to go on and on explaining the complexities of the ability, but no, Urahara basically just says, no, I can reconstruct shit, and you're pretty much screwed, and he immediately goes on the offensive, and I think that's really awesome. This is something that we've wanted to see for a long time. It's also really cool that he's able to pretty much instantly heal anything that's on his body, and basically turn himself into basically a living Frankenstein, if you will. The biggest twist about this chapter, though, without a doubt, is the return of Grimmjow Jaggerjax, and the fact that he's the one who actually gets to finish off Askin Naklavar. I think we can all agree that final part was freaking awesome when he just took his hand and went right through his body, crushing his heart.
Fatality.
Oh yeah. I have to admit, however, Urahara's Bankai looks really flashy and really impressive, but it's surprisingly simple. I'm not sure why they had the image of this giant woman, and I mentioned that she was a puppet because she has these weird-looking puppet-like arms. That's kind of the way that she actually operates. She doesn't speak, she doesn't really do anything aside from basically just appear right behind Urahara, and she kind of disappears for the rest of the chapter. But because of her abilities, he's basically able to take control of the entire battlefield and reconstruct it to his will. Basically, he has taken control of the battlefield entirely, and this has given him an extreme advantage over Askin Naklavar, who, like I said, better be frickin' dead, especially after having his heart frickin' crushed and ripped from his body. There is no way this guy's gonna have another trump card. If he does, I'm not going to be happy about it. I'm not going to lie. That being said, I loved the twist in this chapter. I loved that it was Grimmjow who was actually teaming up with Urahara, and you can tell that he really wasn't too happy about having to team up with him, how he had to use his abilities actually to take him out. You can see that in his expression at the very end of this chapter. That doesn't make it any less badass. One thing that is interesting about Urahara's Bankai is I'm sure there is going to be some sort of major weakness to it. I mean, it does seem a little too overpowered in the sense that he can essentially heal himself from just about anything. I mean, even if he loses like a limb or something, he can completely reconstruct it from practically nothing. I mean, that's how he got his eye back and everything, and sort of just reconfigure everything. But there has to be some sort of attack that can completely knock him out to a point where he can't actually use his Bankai anymore. Then again, Urahara himself is one of the biggest threats to the entire Quincy army, and you can definitely see why in this week's chapter, especially in all of the action scenes this week, which looked pretty damn fantastic, especially when Urahara was on the offensive using his sword and literally sending Askin Noklavar skidding and exploding across the city. That looked really impressive, and just again makes me want to see the anime version return. I want to see these action scenes in animated form. I want to see these voices. I want to see all of these Bankais. It's just a really exciting time to be a Bleach fan, and it's a really good time to be a fan of Urahara because he's finally got all of his abilities right there on the table, and thank God they're not too complex. There's a lot of times when they have these Bankais, and they'll spend a whole chapter just talking about how they work. They got right to it in this week's chapter, and it ended with a badass heart rip. So this was an exciting read of Bleach, which any Bleach fan should definitely check out. So I'm going to give this week's chapter right here a 5 out of 5. It was really action-packed, and it had a great twist ending with Grimmjow Jaggerjax going into the Super Deluxe Ball and ripping up the heart of Askin Noklavar. If you guys read this week's chapter of Bleach, make sure to tell me what you thought about it in the comment section below. What did you think about Urahara's Bankai? Did you like it? Are you disappointed by it? Do you think that Askin Noklavar has actually been defeated? I mean, come on, his heart was just completely ripped out. What did you think of the appearance of Grimmjow? Do you think Grimmjow's going to have another major role in this arc? Or is this going to be the end of this character, unfortunately? And what do you want to see from the rest of the final arc of Bleach? Make sure to tell me in the comment section below. Thank you guys for watching this review. Make sure to like it, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel. Thank you guys again for watching, and as always, stay dandy, baby.